All right, think about modern organizational management for a second. You're probably picturing what? Sleek corporate boardrooms, agile software sprints, maybe a fast-paced startup culture? But what if I told you the absolute ultimate masterclass in leadership, strategy, and honestly spectacular mismanagement happened over a century ago? Yeah, we're talking about the outbreak of World War I. Today in this explainer, we're diving into some incredibly profound management lessons pulled straight from military history. And as you'll see, the boardroom and the battlefield, they are way more alike than you might think. Just to show you I'm not making this up, take a look at this stunning endorsement from Joe Coulombe, the incredibly successful founder of Trader Joe's. He was talking about Barbara Tuchman's Pulitzer Prize-winning classic, The Guns of August. And notice his phrasing here. He didn't just call it a great history book. He literally said it's the absolute best book on management, and especially mismanagement, he had ever read in his entire life. And honestly, he's definitely not the only one who thinks so. This book is widely endorsed by leaders across completely different industries. I mean, it's sitting right there on Elon Musk's recommended audiobook list. The Wall Street Journal named it one of their 5 best on geopolitics, and it's comfortably on the Modern Library's 100 best nonfiction books of all time. So why the hype? Well, because everyone from tech billionaires to military admirals turns to this incredible account to figure out how endless miscalculation, faulty communication, and a total lack of vision can cause massive, entirely preventable disasters. So, to make sense of all the chaos of 1914 and actually apply it to our own teams, we're going to use a brilliant framework developed by John Pearson. We're breaking this down into 4 distinct areas today. First, the cause, strategy and vision. Second, the community, people and teams. Third, the corporation, operations and execution. And finally, number 4, avoiding the mismanagement mess. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the cause, strategy and vision. Right out of the gate, we see a massive contrast between 2 completely different leadership mindsets. First up, you've got French General Ferdinand Foch. He was all about pumping spirit and common sense into his strategy, constantly teaching his teams this idea of perpetual adaptability. He'd always challenge them by asking, what is the essence of the problem? But then you have the Russian Minister for War, General Sukhomlinov. This guy literally boasted, I have not read a military manual for the last 25 years. No way, right? He just stubbornly clung to outdated cavalry tactics and absolutely hated new firepower innovations. So you have one agile, modern thinker and one walking disaster of corporate stubbornness. And Sukhomlinov's arrogance perfectly proves that timeless truth from Helmut von Moltke the Elder: no plan survives first contact with the enemy. It is absolutely crucial to remember that theoretical strategies, no matter how beautifully you draft them up in a boardroom, often just crumble in reality. Political and military mismanagement will infect any organization if leadership relies strictly on rigid, inflexible plans. This brings us to a massive, mind-boggling failure in internal strategy: totally ignoring your own key stakeholders. Get this. On July 30th, 1914, the German Navy Secretary, literally the man who'd been building the fleet since 1897, finally saw the operational orders. And the big secret? There was absolutely no active plan for the Navy. I mean, imagine being the head of a massive corporate department, only to realize the C-suite completely forgot to include your team in the strategic rollout. Failing to communicate with your internal customers leads to catastrophic strategic blunders for sure. So I want you to take a hard look at your own organization right now and ask yourself, is your strategy built on perpetual adaptability, or are you just coasting on outdated manuals? Are you acting like Foch, eagerly asking what the essence of the problem is? Or are you kind of like Sukhomlinov, refusing to learn anything new? Okay, moving on to part 2, the community, people and teams. Building a healthy community is absolutely critical, but WWI is just jam-packed with people and culture blunders. Take Captain Erich Ludendorff of the German General Staff, for example. The guy was a total glutton for hard work, but he deliberately chose to be friendless and unliked. He was known as a man without a shadow. And let me tell you, that is a terrible way to build trust in a cohesive team. Culturally, the German troops also made a massive error in judgment. They were deeply frustrated when the Belgians, who they dismissively mocked as chocolate soldiers, actually fought back fiercely. Underestimating your competition while letting a toxic internal culture brew, that'll rapidly demoralize even your most highly structured teams. But on the flip side, we have this absolutely brilliant example of the ultimate volunteer effort. When Germany was closing in on Paris, the French military desperately needed reinforcements at the front. So what did they do? They rallied the community.
600 Parisian taxi drivers proudly stepped up, enthusiastically packing their cabs to transport 6,000 troops to the front lines. The drivers called it a matter of profound pride. They felt they were participating in what was dubbed the last crusade of the old world. How incredible is that?
And that brings us to a really crucial reflection for us today. How effectively is your organization rallying its volunteers and teams? Because even in a corporate setting, employees need to feel that same level of deep inspiration. How can you creatively inspire your own community to go above and beyond, to eagerly drive their own taxis to the front during your organization's most critical moments? Which leads us right into part 3, the corporation, operations, and execution. The main takeaway here is the fatal cost of board-level stubbornness. Get a load of this. By 1912, the British and Germans had totally adapted their uniforms to modern warfare, using concealed khaki and field gray. But the French, they stubbornly clung to their highly visible 1830s blue coats and bright red trousers. When they were told to change because modern rifles could easily spot them, a former war minister literally cried out, "Eliminate the red trousers? Never!" I mean, wow. That blind attachment to the past had cruel, devastating consequences on the battlefield. Execution also requires decisive action under immense psychological pressure. Just picture the crisis at 10 Dowding Street. The British cabinet had a firm 11 p.m. deadline to declare war. Hours before, the cabinet just sat there, waiting in painful, heavy silence, anticipation building as they watched the clock tick. Finally, Big Ben struck 11, and to the men in the room, the bells literally sounded like doom, doom, doom. It just perfectly captures that agonizing, high-stakes weight of executive decision-making, when the entire company, or in their case the country, is on the line. But hey, making the decision is only half the battle, right? How you execute it matters just as much. One of the greatest causes of operational failure in 1914 was just terrible delegation. General officers literally abandoned their strategic command posts in the rear to go lead from the front. By commandeering horses and riding into the fire, they were basically performing the function of corporals instead of commanders. When leaders abandon their strategic posts to go micromanage the front lines, it creates this unbridgeable gulf between operations and intelligence. You also have to design systems that account for real-world friction. The vision they had was beautiful. Modern commanders would sit safely in roomy offices, overlooking map tables, telephoning inspiring words directly to the front. But the reality? Well, the Belgians cut the telegraph wires, and the powerful Eiffel Tower jammed the airwaves with completely garbled messages. It just goes to show the most beautifully designed operational systems will completely fail if leaders don't account for real-world friction and communication breakdowns. Now, contrast all that mismanagement with General Galliani's 15-minute Council of Defense. Paris was under threat. Civil authority transitioned to the military. So Galliani assembled his cabinet at 10 a.m., and he had everyone do it entirely standing up. The legal documents were pre-drawn on the table. Everyone signed them, and he immediately adjourned the meeting at 10:15. Boom, done. Wildly efficient. He just cut right through all the red tape and bureaucracy to get immediate necessary results. All right, wrapping things up with part 4, avoiding the mismanagement mess. Listen, a commitment to continuous learning is just non-negotiable. Former U.S. Secretary of Defense General Jim Mattis put it perfectly. If you haven't read hundreds of books learning from others who went before you, you're functionally illiterate. You can't coach and you can't lead. It's a pretty stark reminder that reading and learning from history really is our absolute best defense against repeating the catastrophic blunders of the past. So, what are the key takeaways for today's leaders to prevent those exact blunders? First, we need to foster perpetual adaptability. Always be asking what the essence of the problem is. Second, keep your operations and intelligence connected. Whatever you do, don't abandon the command post to micromanage the front line. Third, eliminate the red trousers of corporate stubbornness. Seriously, let go of outdated traditions that just aren't serving you anymore. And fourth, tell the truth under pressure. The mistakes of 1914 are completely preventable today. We just need to build the right management systems. To put this into a modern context, analyst Tevi Troy points out a really severe danger in organizational denial, using modern geopolitics as an example. He notes this historical pattern where adversaries suffer defeat, yet loudly declare victory anyway. Whether we're looking at global conflicts or corporate boardrooms, systemic denial and false narratives still deeply plague leadership today. We see it plainly when failing companies absolutely refuse to admit their core product just isn't working. So we have to ask ourselves a deeply provocative question about our own organization's culture. Are we gutsy enough to call out denial and the lack of truth-telling, even when it comes from our own leaders and board members? History shows us the fatal cost of staying silent. It's really up to us to learn these management lessons, speak the truth, and lead with adaptability. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.